today. It's Friday the 13th in real life, but in the UFC, it's just like the movie Friday the 13th, because there's a round, bald man moving through Camp Crystal Lake / the UFC, making hacks, making cuts, dragging people from the river back to the cabins and back to the river again, nailing people to trees and doing whatever he needs to do, all in the name of that almighty dollar. Only this isn't Jason Voorhees, this is Dana White. Plus, Khamzat Chimaev is set to face Sean Strickland. All of this and more on today's episode of Matter of Fact MMA. What's up? What's happening? Let's go. What's up, guys? We right back at it. We right back with it. It's your boy Matt. We here rocking the Friday the 13th shirt as we get off into the current state of the UFC and the current news. And it's a whole lot to get off into. So we're going to rapidly go through it, but there's a whole lot going on, not even in the mixed martial arts world, but somewhat primarily in the UFC. And what we're dealing with is we have fans disenchanted with the product, sick of the product, tired of the product, don't know what the future of the product is going to be when you're speaking about the UFC. We have fighters disenchanted, not happy, unclear about the streaming deal that is the Paramount streaming deal and how it's going to pay off for the fighters, and definitely, for sure, upset with fighter pay. And now we have stars speaking out about how they don't like the direction of the UFC. They don't like the direction of fighter pay. And they're at the top, so they're getting the lion's share of the dollars. They're upset with what's going on. And the UFC just announced Khamzat Chimaev will step in the octagon and defend his middleweight championship against Sean Strickland. And I could go on. There's many more names. But let's start, at the tippy top. Everybody's upset. Everybody's upset. Who, Matt? Everybody. Everybody. I told you everybody. Everybody is upset. The fans are upset because thus far, as we cruise in, as we are approaching April swiftly, we're not there yet, but swiftly, it's been 3 months, almost a full 3, and we haven't seen anything from the UFC that we thought we were going to see in the Paramount era. It's safe to say, through this first quarter of the year, thus far, the Paramount era, it ain't hitting. It's not going. We not jiving. We ain't talking. We ain't selling, and we ain't paying. Bro, what is going on right now in the UFC? So far, main event wise, we've seen Justin Gaethje step in the octagon with Paddy Pimblett for the interim lightweight championship. Okay, that was alright. We thought it was going to be more of a back and forth fight. That's not really on the UFC or Paramount, but still, that was okay. Then we saw Alexander Volkanovski step back in the octagon with Diego Lopez for the second time and defend his belt. This is when the red flags went off, because this wasn't a fight anybody was clamoring for, and everyone basically knew there's any number of other people Alexander Volkanovski could have stepped in the octagon with that would have made more sense. Then the fight wasn't even an action fight, so we didn't get anything out of it on the action front. What are some of the other big, huge main events we've seen? Well, that would be the BMF title fight from last week, where Charles Oliveira captured the BMF championship of the world from Max Holloway. And it wasn't a BMF fight. It wasn't action-packed. It wasn't anything. And at times it was somewhat cringe, because you're just like, damn, Max, this is the best you can do. You know what I'm saying? It hasn't been hitting. And so let me intertwine a little bit more, right? Let's intertwine a little bit more. We've had Freedom 250, the White House card, has been announced. This was the card that when it was first talked about last year, what we all knew in 2025, because the fights was dry in 2025, all right? Like, let's not act like they just now started putting on bad main events. Fights was dry in 2025, right? Granted, there's not a ton of fighters out here jumping out on the limb trying to be stars or really trying to sell fights. Everybody keeps wanting to lean in that bag of they don't talk on the mic. It's for, you know, for the pioneers of the sport, you know, for more of the purists of mixed martial arts. Those fighters speak out a lot, talk about they're not going to sell a fight, they're not going to talk about it. So I get it, some of this does fall on the fighters. But let's talk about this. In 2025, we got a bunch of bad main events. And we thought in 2026, it's going to be a whole lot better. In 2026, it's going to be hitting because it's Paramount. They're going to want to make a splash. Plus, we got the White House card coming up. Now we know what's going to be on the White House card for the most part. There's like 6 fights that's been announced. They might add on more fights, but right now we got like 6 or 7 fights. Bro, the main event, Ilia Topuria steps in the octagon to unify the lightweight championship. Steps in the octagon to face Justin Gaethje for the for the actual lightweight championship of the world. Okay, that's a big fight. That's a big fight. We all interested in seeing it. But what is the co-main event? Well, okay, the co-main event is something we can work with. It's Alex Pereira, who has vacated the light heavyweight championship of the world. He's headed up to heavyweight, and he's going to fight Cyril Gane for the interim heavyweight championship of the world. Okay, all right, we working with something. Your boy will work with that. All right, you know, I can get down with that. You know what I'm saying? Hit her up. I'll take her number. We can go out someplace. I feel it. We can do it. You know what I'm saying? But what's on the undercard? I only need to name one fight on the undercard to let you know. This fight sets the tone of the undercard. And we're still on the main card, I'd like to add. Not on the prelims. One fight that I will name sums it all up. Sugar Sean O'Malley versus Amin Zahabi. That's all we really need to say there. That's all we really need to say. So you're looking at this card and you're like, dang man, the UFC ain't even going to deliver on the White House card? So then Ariel and everybody springs into action. They start talking about the woulda, coulda, shoulda fights. They coulda went down at the UFC White House card. Well, they were at some point, it was a possibility there could have been Alex Pereira versus Tom Aspinall, but Tom Aspinall still got the one-eyed Tom. He still got the issues with his eyes, had to have eye surgery. Shout out to Tom Aspinall, get well, man. Well, then they started touting that the primary main event that they were shooting for is they were still going to do the interim heavyweight championship fight between Alex and Cyril Gane, but they were also aiming to have Ilia Topuria stepping in the octagon to challenge Islam Makhachev for the welterweight championship of the world. Now that would have been huge. But we find out that only reason that fight didn't happen, now it's been somewhat touted and reported, but I'm not sure how true this is, that Islam Makhachev got injured and had to pull out of training, so they didn't want to do the fight. But we also hear a lot of rumblings on the back end that Dana White or whoever the matchmakers of the UFC, Mick Maynard, Sean Shelby, weren't going to deliver that number under the Paramount umbrella, I'd like to add, that Ilia Topuria wanted for a fight of that magnitude. And we've somewhat heard a little bit of that rumbling on the Islam Makhachev side, coming from his manager. What is up with that? You know what I'm saying? This is the White House card. You're aligned with the president. That's Dana White's buddy. The Prez been to multiple UFC events. You know what I'm saying? Has a good time. Has John Jones doing his own dance after he defeats Stipe Miocic. you're not going to foot the bill and pay whatever it takes to get the proper fighters on the card? To get Ilia Topuria versus Islam Makhachev? You're not going to foot the bill for that? All right. So you're going to do Gaethje versus Ilia Topuria. You're not going to foot the bill? You're not going to pay the cost to be the boss and pay any other stars, what few stars you have left, to fill out the rest of the White House card? What are we doing here, right? Let's move over to MVP, Most Valuable Promotions. Mainly working with Netflix right now. They've now went ahead, inked the deal. It's set in stone. It's going down sometime in May. Ronda Rousey makes her return after 10 years to a mixed martial arts fight to face, after 17 years of being out the game, Gina Carano in the main event. And the co-main event is Francis Ngannou, fresh off of PFL fame, off them PFL streets, them PFL back alleys. He's going to step in the Most Valuable Promotions and have an MMA fight with, I believe, Felipe Lins. Is that his name? The homie who's a heavyweight, Brazilian heavyweight. I don't even know if that's his name. I believe that's his name. That's the point of what I'm saying. What are we doing here, bro? So Jake Paul's going to take that, skate that over to Netflix, and break the new MMA live viewing record with those two at the top of the card. As I can tell you right now, that Gina Carano Ronda Rousey fight ends in round 1. If it goes to round 2, it's only because Ronda let it. And that's no disrespect to Gina Carano in her prime, but when you look at the state of both of these women now, it's clear Ronda knows what she's about to do. And she's about to go in there and quickly, easily, without giving her a lot of damage, she's going to tap Gina Carano. She's going to submit her. Probably in the first round. If it goes to the second round, it's only because Ronda allowed it to. Francis Ngannou, this dude, he's going to go out there and he's going to finish his opponent round 1. Round 1. If it goes to round 2, it's only because Francis wants to kind of fill this out and maybe make it last slightly longer and go to round 2. But that's what it is, right? And what you got is you did the press conference for these two fights. MVP did. And you got Ronda Rousey taking shots at the UFC, talking about Dana White is a good dude. That's sus. But Dana White is a stand-up guy, but he's now in bed with Paramount and the rest of the UFC and the matchmakers, and they're not willing to foot the bill. They're not willing to pay the fighters because they have to hit that bottom line. They have to hit that bottom line as to what the shareholders have put in via Paramount. And they're trying to maximize those shareholder dollars. Ronda Rousey's telling you this on a live mic. Gina Carano is saying that Dana White originally hit her up back in like 2024 trying to set up the fight between her and Ronda Rousey. Ronda Rousey admits, and I don't know if she would have admitted this or they would have told this if Gina Carano hadn't had loose lips, and said that Dana White had already contacted her about this fight. Right? I don't know if Ronda would have exposed that because it actually cast the old UFC somewhat in a good light. Because then once that was put out there, Ronda had to agree that, yeah, at first the UFC came to us, we went to the UFC, however it worked. They were going to do this fight. And Ronda said they gave them great deals, good money, and they were going to close out the year of 2025, the last big show under the ESPN deal was going to be Ronda Rousey stepping back into the octagon to face Gina Carano. Now, with all the pomp and circumstance that the UFC would have put into that, that would have got everybody excited. That would have got you where you needed to be, if you know what I'm talking about, right? But then Ronda said that Gina couldn't make the timeline in which to do the fight because she wasn't in shape yet. Go figure. Kooky Gina Carano couldn't get herself in shape in time to make this monumental moment. See everything else in her career, including The Mandalorian. So, what we're saying is they're exposing that. And then when they came back to the table, once Gina was ready, the UFC couldn't pay him the same amount of money they were going to do in the new streaming era because now we ain't got to worry about pay-per-view. There are no pay-per-view points. Ronda's giving y'all the game. And I'm not a Ronda Rousey fan at all, but Ronda Rousey, she giving y'all the game because she don't give a damn about her reputation, right? And so she's giving y'all the game. Let's move over to more UFC fighters. Let's talk about Israel Adesanya. Upset that Conor Benn getting $15 million over the course of however many fights. But I think it's only a one-fight deal to fight for Zuffa Boxing. All of this enthusiasm Dana White has for Zuffa Boxing, right? That made Izzy mad. Izzy's like, well, I mean, I'm on my way out in my career, right? Which I'm happy about, not an Izzy fan. But still, man, the dude put in work in the UFC, right? He's over like, you gonna pay his homie $15 million? He ain't no household name here in America. You know what I'm saying? You know, he ain't no household name in America. You know, come on, man. Huge name in the UK, especially based off his father's legendary feud with Chris Eubanks. Chris Eubanks Sr., I should say. Definitely well known for the 2 fights he's had against Chris Eubanks Jr. But still, man, not in America. He ain't no household name, not worth $15 million. Fighters are speaking out. You got Conor McGregor speaking out. Conor McGregor's always been a company man. Conor McGregor always leaned toward the UFC. You know what I'm saying? At the end of the day, whatever he might have said about wanting equity in the company, the man always was a company man and prepared to go out there on the company shield. Now Conor McGregor's speaking out, talking about if you're going to give Conor Benn $15 million, what are you going to pay Mac? What are you going to pay Mystic Mac? What are you going to pay him for his return? Granted, I think he goes out there and gets waxed by whoever they have him fight. I mean, at this point in his career, I think you got to go pretty low. You can't give him they're going to give him a top 15 fighter, but you shouldn't because he's going to lose. I'd say you probably have to go top 25 or lower, meaning top 30. You know what I'm saying? Top 40 to find a lightweight or a welterweight that Conor McGregor is going to go out there and defeat. And that's unfortunate to say, but he's got a lot of problems, man. But even he's flexing. He's talking about if you're going to give this homie $15 million, what are you going to give the Mac man? What are you going to give Conor McGregor? You know what I'm saying? It's something to think about. Sugar Sean O'Malley, who's about to get an easy win on the White House card. Even he talked about, I don't even know who Conor Benn is. Now, I know who Conor Benn is because I follow boxing a little bit, and I'm sure Sugar Sean probably is somewhat aware, but he makes a good point that nobody really knows who Conor Benn is in America. And he's getting paid $15 million? It's very interesting. They talked to Francis Ngannou. They asked him, this is after the press conference for the Ronda fight. They were talking to Francis Ngannou, very telling comments where they brought up, and this is an argument that Matt, have made, where they brought up, what do you say to those people like Matt from Matter of Fact MMA? They didn't actually say that, but it would have been cool if they would have said that because your boy would have been getting into the bag, into the money, if they would have brought me up to Francis Ngannou. But still, they said, what do you think about the people that say you mess up your legacy by going after the dollars, going after the cents, and leaving the UFC? And he had something he said very, very, I give him his, shout out to Frank the Tank, Francis Ngannou. I give him his props. Because he said, well, at the end of the day, man, your kids can't eat legacy. You know what I'm saying? You can't send your kids to the best schools via legacy, right? You can do that via dollars and cents. And I'm paraphrasing. Those weren't his exact words, but shout out to Francis Ngannou. I've always saw it from that point of view. I still stand on what I said about him having that legacy in the UFC, but unfortunately I believe that's more based out of the fact I'm such a huge fan of the man, and I really think that he had the skills at heavyweight to be the greatest of all time in the UFC heavyweight division. Because even though I got John Jones sitting on my wall, John Jones gets hit a lot, especially at this stage in his life. And you can't take too many shots from Francis Ngannou. And he could have been the one to send John Jones packing, right? Outside of that Matt Hamill loss, to have that one loss in that loss column. But shout out to him, man. Things are getting weird. The UFC goes out there and announces a bunch of fights coming up later on this year. And let's not all roll over and, play dead, so to speak, and get all into it, right? Because they announced some main events that seem like they're going to be very good fights, and one really good fight that we all really want to see. But we know what the UFC's game is under Paramount. It's only going to be the main event, and the rest of the card's going to be trash. And what fans, real combat sports fans that study the sport, that know the sport, know all aspects from Muay Thai to boxing to mixed martial arts, what we all know is, UFC, bro, what are y'all doing? This ain't y'all's real bag. What drove us all to you was not only would you put the stars in the main event and the co-main event, your undercards was like WrestleMania every week. Your undercards was like the Super Bowl every time. You were putting together undercards that couldn't be denied, and even prelims. And then we were like, okay, so maybe we'll get a few dusty prelims, but super good main cards. And then every now and then we get a UFC 300, a UFC 200, a UFC this and that, where they really stack it. But you ain't even delivering that nowadays. People are upset, man. And it all boils down to the Jason Voorhees / Dana White. The Jason Voorhees of the UFC, who's going through the UFC like it's Crystal Lake, and he's hacking people to pieces. He's unaliving all of your favorites and all of your stars via he's not paying them. And I've gone on here and I've talked about many times about the UFC. You can't wait on them to make you a star. And if you really want to get to the dollars, you got to maximize your own personality and yourself. And the UFC will work with you once you start bringing in those numbers on your socials and all of that. But bro, when you won't even pay the fighters to go out there for the White House card, right? We know you're going to have a bunch of trash cards before the White House and after. But your main events throughout the year, your International Fight Week, this White House card, your beginning of the year card, your late summer card, your October card or November card when we go back to Madison Square Gardens, and your end of the year card, your every now and then Abu Dhabi card. Those are the ones that you're known to stack. And something tells me if you're not stacking the White House card, you're not going to stack these other cards. You're going to go the boxing route of the mid-2000s, or, mid-2000s, where you're going to give us a bunch of unknown fighters, a bunch of unknown fights we're not worried about. You're lucky if you get someone you lightly heard of, more of the hardcores have heard of, in your co-main event, and then the main event will be a tentpole type main event. That ain't going to sustain the UFC, bro. That ain't going to work, especially when guys like Jake Paul are over here willing to foot the bill with Netflix and broadcast. Everybody got Netflix. We all got 25 passwords to Netflix. Everybody got Netflix. You know what I'm saying? When you got guys like Jake Paul willing to do their thing. And how long before guys like Eddie Hearn, the enemy of the UFC, or at least of Dana White, and your Bob Arums, your guys like that, You know what I'm saying? How long? I know Dana is cool with Turkey right now, Turkey Al-Rashid, so that fares well for Zuffa boxing and boxing. But for how long before a boxing promoter who can't stand the UFC, who gets the proper right-hand man, so to speak, to guide them through the mixed martial arts world, appeals to Netflix and says, man, let us work with, maybe it'll be MVP, maybe it'll just be Jake Paul. Maybe we'll have MVP MMA, which hasn't been announced as an official league yet, or official company. Maybe it'll be Jake Paul, but somebody's going to jump on another streaming service. Now, it seems Paramount is in really good with Amazon, so it might not be on them, but it might be through Netflix. How long before somebody comes through with a bag, catches your stars in the latter year, starts paying them that bag, or starts their own feeder league on the local circuits and start feeding themselves guys and girls and building them up and starts doing mixed martial arts shows on Netflix on a weekly basis? Will you then make the fights that we want to see? Time will tell, man. But that's what I'm saying. Right now, the UFC is Friday the 13th. The Octagon is Camp Crystal Lake, and Jason Voorhees is Dana White. And they moving through, bro. They moving through. They hacking fighters to bits, my dude. We ain't getting those good fights. And granted, I'm a guy that enjoys a little bit of sloppy. You know what I'm saying? So I messes with some of these Contender Series fighters. I mess around with the Dana White Contender Series. That's appointment viewing in my household on a Tuesday night over a few Modelo's. Shout out to Modelo. Can I get a sponsorship from Modelo? Holla at me. Nevertheless, man, you can't keep trotting out these Contender Series fighters on these low budget, low level UFC contracts and filling your cards full of them and putting an Israel Adesanya at the top. What are we doing? I don't know, man. Crazy times. I just wanted to drop in, holler at y'all, see what y'all thought about that. Let me know what you think. Let me know, is it Matt or is it fact? And once again, I do want to thank you guys for joining me for another episode of Matter of Fact MMA. And I'll check you next time.